Chapter 6. To an onlooker, something like primordial chaos was like a brushstroke from a god. The stuff that Lao Wu described, it was clear the attraction they had on Lu Zhi Wei. She believed that it wouldn't be just her who wanted to see it, every human would be curious. But she was just saying it casually. If the world really ended up like that, then what difference would it be compared to Armageddon? She nestled on her sofa, feeling for the first time that she really was a hero saving the world. This term, she had only ever seen it in television shows. It was funny, a small transparent entity could one day become the savior of the world. She wouldn't even dare to dream of it. Seeing her fall silent, Lao Wu calmly said, "Aside from primordial chaos, there's another type of bug. Lu Zhi Wei blinked and adjusted her sitting posture slightly. Then she heard Lao Wu's calm voice saying, "It's more people becoming like the old you, transparent. Lu Zhi Wei was stunned. Looking up from beneath his eyelids at the screen, Lao Wu, "Even like that, you still refuse to do it?" The answer was clear, Lu Zhi Wei was not someone like that. She was strong, kind and optimistic. Even if you wrote the villain's script clearly and placed it in front of her, she wouldn't be able to play the role of a villain. She just wasn't born to do it. Lao Wu had clearly grasped his point before daring to tell her about this bug. As Lu Zhi Wei came out of her trance, her gaze flickered to the empty space as if she wanted to see the person on the other side. "So you knew from the start why I was like air in the past, right?" Lao Wu swirled the coffee in his cup gently, his eyes clear, "Yes. Lu Zhi Wei pressed on, "Why? Secret. He said again. Crawling up from the sofa, Lu Zhi Wei asked, "So if I can draw that exception you mentioned, can you tell me why?" She was optimistic, but that doesn't mean she didn't care about her past. She gave up questioning her past because nobody would be able to answer. But now that someone who can answer has finally appeared, how could she give up? To her, she had to understand her life. She had to understand her happiness and her pain. Otherwise when she leaves, she wouldn't know what she had lived for in this life. "Yes. Lao Wu said. "If you draw it, I'll be able to tell you. The simple answer lit up Lu Zhi Wei's fighting spirit like a match on firewood, burning even brighter and stronger. She was going to do missions, to stop the bug from appearing, to accumulate mission points. She wanted her answer. Lao Wu reminded her, "You've already accumulated 4 mission points. 1 more and you can draw a prize. Hearing it, Lu Zhi Wei got up and picked up her notebook. Revise. Questioning Deity Sect's production team was effective. After the auditions, the cast was quickly announced. Lu Zhi Wei successfully got chosen as the little junior sister, and she signed the contract with the production team, with filming slated to begin in the new year. Before she left, she probed, "Has the female lead been decided?" "It's been decided." "Who is it?" "Sang Wan Ci, the contract is all signed." Hearing that, Lu Zhi Wei relaxed. As long as the female lead was Sang Wan Ci, she wouldn't have to worry about not having a chance to advance the plot. But those were 2 different matters. Getting a happy ending with the female lead was one thing, becoming a top actress is another. While Sang Wan Ci was working hard for her career, she had to work hard for her career too. As her manager, Wen Yao put in all her effort to find shows for Lu Zhi Wei. It didn't matter if the roles were big or small. After all, she didn't have the right to be picky right now. But she never expected to be pulled into a certain ancient drama to be the female lead's maid. And it was even a scheming palace maid. Reportedly, the original actress suddenly got too arrogant and refused to continue acting in the role. The production was underway and the director was rushing to find a replacement who was similar. After Wen Yao heard this, she immediately sent over Lu Zhi Wei's resume. The director was satisfied after seeing it, even feeling like she was better than the original actress, so Lu Zhi Wei had gotten the role. The drama was called Phoenix, and it was about the female lead who was known as the living reincarnation of Zhuge Liang. As the male lead's military strategist, she devised winning strategies from thousands of miles away and watched the founding of a dynasty before making the worst decision in her life, entering the palace as the new queen. She grew tired of life in the palace, requesting the male lead to let her leave and retreat into seclusion in the mountains many times. She was rejected every time as she watched the male lead walk further and further down the road of becoming a despot. Indulging in women, executing loyal ministers and ruining the lives of the common people, that man was no longer the same person from before. After failed attempts at persuading him, the female lead who cared for the world could no longer stand it. She hardened her heart and decided to kill the male lead, proclaiming herself as emperor. When Lu Zhi Wei got the script, she couldn't help but exclaim that this strategist Jia was incredible. If she couldn't leave, then she stayed, killed the despot emperor and took the throne herself. She completely fulfilled the I can I up, one, principle. Awesome, too awesome. It's just. She looked at the strategist in front of her, then silently lowered her head. Good, please read at. Really good. Nobody told her when she arrived that the female lead was Sang Wan Ci. She quickly pulled up the original script and confirmed that Phoenix never existed in the original timeline, feeling speechless. Most Honorable High-Ranking System Administrator Mr. Lao Wu, hello. Please look. The female lead has already gone out of the plot twice. She covered her face with her hand helplessly, doubt on her face. Did you guys give me the original script and not fanfiction? If not, why did the female lead keep on refusing to follow the original script? Isn't it ridiculous? Lao Wu. He began to contemplate in silence, his gaze flickering between the two protagonists. His eyes stopped at Sang Wan Ci many times. It was like he hated not being able to drill into her mind and check it to find the problem. Why didn't she follow the script? After considering it for a moment, he calmed down. It must be because of the male protagonist halo. The protagonist halos are attracted to each other, thus causing them to meet each other again and again, by chance. No worries, it's a small problem. Sang Wan Ci felt it was surprising too. Why was it she was always able to meet this person? This was a crazy devoted fan? Was she really her crazy devoted fan? She frowned. Forget it. Lu Zhi Wei thought about it. Since she could bump into Sang Wan Ci here, then she could progress the storyline, it was a good thing. After thinking about it cheerfully, she took the initiative to greet the other, teacher Sang, too, hello. Hello. Sang Wan Ci replied calmly, without any hint of enthusiasm or coldness. Until now, she still didn't know what the person in front of her was called. Almost as if Lu Zhi Wei had heard her thoughts, she opened her mouth again. I just realized, I haven't introduced myself, I'm really sorry. My surname is Lu, the same character as for dear. I'm Lu Zhi Wei, I'll be looking forward to your guidance, teacher Sang. Lu Zhi Wei. Sang Wan Ci nodded lightly, indicating she had remembered it. Lu Zhi Wei turned away and went to greet the others, with Wen Yao. It was at this time a black van pulled up and a handsome young man got out. The male lead for Phoenix, a popular rising star, Ying Xi Ze. As she looked at his face, Lu Zhi Wei's eyes went up subconsciously. It was red. The sign of a supporting character. The second male lead of the original script had appeared, Chapter 7. The second male lead was someone who would try his best to snatch the female lead from the male lead in various novels or television dramas, and he would fail terribly 90% of the time. Otherwise, he would be the male lead. Now, the female lead, the male lead and the second male lead were all in the same production. Lu Zhi Wei didn't know what was going to happen next, but in all likelihood, it wasn't going to be peaceful. Because the original script wasn't peaceful either. Ying Xi Ze had adamantly thrown himself into the path of fighting with Qiu Luo over Sang Wan Ci, although he would always unintentionally sabotage himself by accidentally advancing the relationship of the female lead and the male lead. He was one of the reasons why the female and male lead had an unbreakable bond, a good tool in the script, indeed. Lu Zhi Wei watched silently as he took off his sunglasses and cap, greeting the production team enthusiastically while smiling. He looked like a polite, modest person. Lu Zhi Wei recalled how he was like in the original script. In the beginning, he was exactly like this, polite and elegant, After he found out that the female lead and the male lead had gotten together, it was like his character design completely collapsed and he became stupid and evil just to try and get the female lead. In the end, when the female lead married the male lead, he finally retreated and got together with the white moonlight in his heart. Yes. The reason he liked the female lead was because she resembled his white moonlight, who had left the country. Who the hell was in charge of writing these scripts? The white moonlights always left the country, Lu Zhi Wei quietly complained in her heart. And it was because Ying Xi Ze couldn't obtain this white moonlight that he transferred these emotions to Sang Wan Ci. Initially, it was just emotions for another person that he had, but he really fell for her deeply and ended up being such a good tool to progress the storyline. Standing in her original spot, Lu Zhi Wei ran through her memories again and again, with her eyebrows furrowed. She felt this wasn't right. Becoming evil and laying a hand on Sang Wan Ci wasn't right. Sang Wan Ci was born perfect, but that wasn't a reason for people to harm her or force her against her will. First seeing Sang Wan Ci as a replacement, then falling in love with her, before finally being forced to go back to his white moonlight wasn't right either. Who did he really love, in this case? Isn't it also a sort of harm to Sang Wan Ci and his white moonlight? And why did he have the right to go back to his white moonlight? Was she a rubbish recycling plant to take him back? As for being made stupid, that wasn't right either. Whether it was the second male or female lead, Lu Zhi Wei wanted them to make their choices of their own free will. Even if they were bad, it had to be of their own choice and not forced upon them. Otherwise, how were they different from puppets? Living a life like that would be even worse than living her transparent life. Although other people wouldn't notice her, at least she could choose how she wanted to live. Having lived carefreely, Lu Zhi Wei was depressed at the thought of such a life, so she asked casually, Lao Wu, do you think they can still be saved? She had a lot of questions, especially about whether these side characters who were blackened and made stupid were because of their own choices or if it was forced by the storyline. If it was forced, it was too tragic. Some people can be saved, some people can't be. Lao Wu replied. Lu Zhi Wei was curious, so she continued, why? Raising the mic, Lao Wu used a single "you have too many questions lately" to rebut her, clearly not planning to reply any further. This question's answer impacted the world, so the system administrators couldn't randomly disclose it to the hosts, even if they were the host's mommy fan. Lu Zhi Wei brushed the blame off, you guys make people too curious. Lao Wu. Then I'm really sorry for making you so curious. Lu Zhi Wei, it's alright, you can change as long as you know your mistakes, that's best. Lao Wu, head. Although Lao Wu wouldn't tell her the reason why, but after knowing they could be saved, Lu Zhi Wei's mood improved considerably and her eyes lit up as a thought entered her mind. If they could be saved, she was willing to try. Since she was already going to save the world, then what was so hard about putting in a bit more effort to save some people who had been blackened by the script? There was even one faded one for her to practice on now. When Yao saw Lu Zhi Wei silently staring at Ying Xi Ze with bright eyes, and she was immediately conflicted. Her gaze shifted as she prodded Lu Zhi Wei with her elbow and asked softly, Zhi Wei Jia, why are you looking at him like that? Are you his fan? Lu Zhi Wei came back to her senses as she asked blurrily, What? After she had a moment to react, she smiled, no, my idol is a super charismatic woman. Yes, it was the great film empress Meng Lianyu. If she was as excellent as teacher Meng, nobody would not love her. When Yao Ed and didn't continue asking. Coincidentally, Sang Wan Ci was walking nearby with Zhang Xianrui. That sentence accidentally got overheard by Sang Wan Ci. With all the clues from before, Sang Wan Ci's eyebrow lifted gently as she looked at Lu Zhi Wei's back in contemplation before she looked away. She felt that super charismatic shouldn't have been about her. Sang Wan Ci's appearance resulted in Ying Xi Ze looking over in their direction before standing still, unable to speak. It wasn't that he didn't know what Sang Wan Ci looked like, he had previously thought that she looked rather similar to the white moonlight he kept in his heart. Although Sang Wan Ci did look prettier. But when he saw her in real life, he couldn't control his surprise at Sang Wan Ci's appearance. It was like she was still around. Sang Wan Ci met his heated gaze calmly, almost as even if God himself had come, she wouldn't move a single eyebrow. Lu Zhi Wei was like an entranced person standing by the side and observing. Because Sang Wan Ci was different from the rest, and because the storyline had been changed, even the female lead and the second male lead's first meeting had been pushed forward. And looking at Ying Xi Ze's expression, he had been struck by the female lead's beauty, so he wasn't acting out of the norm. Then was the second male lead going to fall in love with the female lead now? Was it starting? "Hello, Miss Sang." Ying Xi Ze took the initiative to call out to her with his signature smile. "I'm Ying Xi Ze." After that, he didn't forget to introduce himself to Zhang Xianrui as well. Sang Wan Ci looked at his outstretched hand with her eyes lowered, then gently grasped his fingertips. "Hello, I've heard of you." Lu Zhi Wei didn't know why, but she suddenly felt as if Sang Wan Ci was being forced to socialize. It seemed like she didn't quite like having to deal with these things. Ying Xi Ze didn't take Sang Wan Ci's actions to heart, smiling sincerely. "I'm very happy to be working with Miss Sang. If there's anything I'm not doing right, I hope Miss Sang will teach me." Sang Wan Ci answered modestly, "I can't teach anyone, I'm also a new entrant to the industry." "Miss Sang is being modest," Ying Xi Ze said. "I've seen your shows, your acting is very good. I still have much to learn from you." On this point, Lu Zhi Wei agreed. When she was watching Sang Wan Ci's works at home, she found that Sang Wan Ci's acting was extraordinary, almost as if God had blessed her. No, it was more like God had chased after her and begged her to take the blessing. Ying Xi Ze's praise wasn't quite effective on Sang Wan Ci, who reacted calmly, without pride or arrogance. It was almost as if she really couldn't feel how outstanding she was. Or maybe she never even realized she was an outstanding person. Standing there, Lu Zhi Wei looked at her quietly. The next second, their eyes met. The two of them froze. Coming back to her senses, Lu Zhi Wei smiled at her, her eyes curving up. Sang Wan Ci's eyes flickered as she gave a slight nod and looked away, turning around to leave. Ying Xi Ze followed Sang Wan Ci's gaze to look at Lu Zhi Wei. After Sang Wan Ci left, he stood at his original spot and looked at Lu Zhi Wei before asking his assistant, "Who is that? What role are they playing?" This question stumped his assistant, who looked at Lu Zhi Wei confusedly. "Yeah, that's right. Who's this? When did this person appear?" Ying Xi Ze saw that his assistant was at a loss as well, so he smiled and patted the other man's shoulder. "It's all right, I'll just ask." When Yao saw Ying Xi Ze walking toward them suddenly, and she grabbed Lu Zhi Wei's hand tightly, "Jia, seize this opportunity. You might become friends? One more friend is one more connection, you'll be protected in the future, Jia." Lu Zhi Wei. Whether or not they would become friends, she didn't know. But she did know that the two of them could possibly become love rivals. If things progressed like the original script, the male lead and the second male lead would get along like fire and water. Their fans would fight the moment they saw each other, and the male lead would win various Best Actor awards to suppress the other person. But that wasn't too possible now. Expecting her to fight with various supporting male characters for the Best Male Actor awards, that scene was too beautiful. She didn't dare to think about it. "Hello, I'm Ying Xi Ze." Lu Zhi Wei was still deep in thought when Ying Xi Ze walked up to her and stuck out his hand politely. Grasping it, Lu Zhi Wei courteously said, "Hello, Lu Zhi Wei." Repeating the name, Ying Xi Ze dug through his memories to no avail. "I haven't heard of you before?" "I just entered T. Chapter 8. Very clearly, a man." Lao Wu's pause made Lu Zhi Wei feel as if he was manually marking an important point. All that was missing was a red and thick line under it. Speechless, utterly speechless. She originally thought it was just a problem with the halo's gender. Now, in other people's eyes, she actually became a man. This wasn't a proper halo. Thinking about it, she looked in the direction Sang Wan Ci had left. "You don't mean to say, she also thinks I'm a guy?" so be it if Ying Xi Ze misunderstood. If even Sang Wan Ci took her as a man, this was too crazy. She was already guilty enough about her, a straight woman, having to bend another straight woman. If she even had to deceive the other person about the fact she was a female, how could she do it? Lu Zhi Wei, kill me, system. Lao Wu's voice was extremely leisurely, she doesn't. Placing his hands on the control table, he started working. This should just be a random problem that only affects the smaller characters, like the second male leading Xi Ze, because nobody else has had this problem of misidentifying you. He continued, you silly child, didn't you hear Wen Yao calling you Jia, one? It was as if Lu Zhi Wei woke from a dream, and she relaxed. But looking at the face of Ying Xi Ze, who looked as if he was looking at a brother, she immediately felt her head start to hurt. She never expected to still become the male lead in the end. Lao Wu sympathized with her, bear with it, I'll try and repair his bug as soon as I can. Hope ignited in Lu Zhi Wei's heart. But Lao Wu quickly continued, but because this is the first time such a bug has appeared, I don't know when I can fix it, so. Work hard, mommy believes in you. Lu Zhi Wei, please read at Jiulian Lian. WordPress. If she committed a crime, let the law punish her. And not let the system torture her. Ying Xi Ze was still judging her, scrutinizing her from head to toe. After that, he sighed in his heart. The cross-dressing actors nowadays are really too impressive. There's no way to tell that it's a man at all. Thankfully my eyes are sharp, and I have a man's intuition. Lu Zhi Wei didn't know how to reply to Ying Xi Ze. If the judgment had been made, then it seems like nothing she said would be able to change Ying Xi Ze's opinion that she was a man. If that was the case, then why was she still hesitating? Just say it straight. I'm not a cross-dressing actor. Lu Zhi Wei said. I'm an actress. Ying Xi Ze startled slightly, then asked for a word in private. Lu Zhi Wei followed him to the side obediently. Ying Xi Ze's expression was still complicated. After a few seconds of silence, he asked, Lu Zhi, too, did you encounter some difficulties? Lu Zhi Wei was stunned. Frowning, Ying Xi Ze asked, or else why can't you be honest about your identity as a man? Lu Zhi Wei. Seeing her stay silent, Ying Xi Ze seemed to have something pop up in his brain as he suddenly patted her shoulder. You're older than me, so it's not wrong for me to call you Ji. Lu Ji, since you have your own difficulties, I won't force you to say it either. But you can't use this identity to do evil things, or I won't help you keep it a secret, okay? Lu Zhi Wei. Help. This conversation was too outrageous, she didn't even know what to reply. With a you don't need to thank me, we're all bros expression, Ying Xi Ze suddenly asked after a moment of thinking, Lu Ji, do you know Miss Sang? Lu Zhi Wei replied honestly and a bit hesitantly. A little? Ying Xi Ze? What kind of answer was that? Who would know someone a little? Then why did you smile at her just now? Lu Zhi Wei slowly and righteously said, she looked at me, so I smiled to be polite, isn't that the right thing to do? She looked at me. These 4 words slowly drifted into Ying Xi Ze's ear, all the way to his heart, and it was as if a needle had jabbed him, painfully and itchily. He paused. Please read at Jiulian Lian. WordPress. That's right. It was clearly Sang Wan Ci who had looked over first. And Sang Wan Ci hadn't even been willing to look at him more than an initial glance, a cold one at that. He stayed silent for a moment before looking at Lu Zhi Wei and smiling, you're right. Then, if there's nothing else, I'll head off first. You work hard too. Gu, I believe you can definitely become the best cross-dressing actor in our country, Lu Zhi Wei. That wouldn't be necessary. Lu Zhi Wei watched as Ying Xi Ze left. She thought that Ying Xi Ze was polite and interesting, his character was actually quite likable. Thinking about it, she couldn't understand how someone like this could eventually become such a detestable side character. Could he be saved or not? Tucking her hands into her pockets, Lu Zhi Wei sank into deep contemplation. Regardless of whether she could save him or not, she would try her best. This way, she could protect Sang Wan Ci as well. As long as she could make Ying Xi Ze realize that fruit snatched by force wasn't sweet, that he shouldn't be so adamant about chasing Sang Wan Ci, it could be a great outcome. Especially if he went to date someone who was willing to be with him, or he could wait for his white moonlight to come back. Worst come to worst, he could focus on his career. But speaking of which, when was the 5th mission going to come? Her heart was too eager for the prize and couldn't be contained. Before filming started, there was a script reading session with all the important cast members. Lu Zhi Wei had a moderate amount of scenes, and because she was the closest maid to the female lead and had an important role in the development of the story, she had to join in too. The main cast of Phoenix were all serious and professional people, nobody would doubt the quality of their work. As long as they acted and filmed it, the audience would definitely watch it. They would never not support a product that had responsible and serious actors. Lu Zhi Wei sat in a discreet location, hugging her notebook as her mind was in a bit of a mess. She hadn't experienced this atmosphere in a very, very long time. It finally symbolized her return after drifting away from her dreams. In the beginning, she was completely focused and she didn't look at Sang Wan Ci much aside from when she was reading the script. The her now was not the male lead who needed to save the world, but a student who had newly returned to the entertainment industry and wanted to study hard. Sang Wan Ci was the one who kept looking over at Lu Zhi Wei because of the two occurrences. Each time, she saw Lu Zhi Wei sitting there and seriously taking notes, with the passion for the job apparent in her eyes. This side of her was burning like a fire, radiant as the sun. Nobody present could compare. Looking back at her script, Sang Wan Ci flipped through it. This was good. Please read at Jiulian. WordPress. Calm. Regardless of whether she was a fan, as long as she treated her work seriously, it was good. As she looked down, Lu Zhi Wei raised her head and looked over. They just missed each other. Lu Zhi Wei asked Lao Wu, curiously, was she looking at me just now? Lao Wu, I don't know, I'm busy, I didn't see. He was happily fixing the bug. But what made him happy was not the appearance of the bug, but because it was the first time he was fixing a bug that had appeared for the first time. Even if the bug was urgent, it was fine even if he couldn't fix it immediately. He wasn't someone who liked repetitive things, but as a system administrator, he had no choice but to encounter a lot of repetitive things. Even if he didn't like it, he would have to suck it up and do it anyway. Oh, then go ahead. Lu Zhi Wei retracted her gaze and continued listening to the producers. The back and forth between Lu Zhi Wei and Sang Wan Ci was observed by Ying Xi Ze, though. He snuck a glance at Sang Wan Ci, then he looked at the serious and focused Lu Zhi Wei. Thinking of how Sang Wan Ci had looked at Lu Zhi Wei first the other day, doubt crept into his heart. Could Miss Sang like a serious man like Lu Zhi? Chapter 8. Very clearly, a man. Lao Wu's pause made Lu Zhi Wei feel as if he was manually marking an important point. All that was missing was a red and thick line under it. Speechless, utterly speechless. She originally thought it was just a problem with the halo's gender. Now, in other people's eyes, she actually became a man. This wasn't a proper halo. Thinking about it, she looked in the direction Sang Wan Ci had left. You don't mean to say, she also thinks I'm a guy? So be it if Ying Xi Ze misunderstood. If even Sang Wan Ci took her as a man, this was too crazy. She was already guilty enough about her, a straight woman, having to bend another straight woman. If she even had to deceive the other person about the fact she was a female, how could she do it? Lu Zhi Wei, kill me, system. Lao Wu's voice was extremely leisurely, she doesn't. Placing his hands on the control table, he started working. This should just be a random problem that only affects the smaller characters, like the second male leading Xi Ze, because nobody else has had this problem of misidentifying you. He continued, you silly child, didn't you hear Wen Yao calling you Jia, one? It was as if Lu Zhi Wei woke from a dream, and she relaxed. But looking at the face of Ying Xi Ze, who looked as if he was looking at a brother, she immediately felt her head start to hurt. She never expected to still become the male lead in the end. Lao Wu sympathized with her. Bear with it, I'll try and repair his bug as soon as I can. Hope ignited in Lu Zhi Wei's heart. But Lao Wu quickly continued, but because this is the first time such a bug has appeared, I don't know when I can fix it, so work hard, mommy believes in you. Lu Zhi Wei, please read at Jiulian Lian. WordPress. If she committed a crime, let the law punish her. And not let the system torture her. Ying Xi Ze was still judging her, scrutinizing her from head to toe. After that, he sighed in his heart. The cross-dressing actors nowadays are really too impressive. There's no way to tell that it's a man at all. Thankfully my eyes are sharp, and I have a man's intuition. Lu Zhi Wei didn't know how to reply to Ying Xi Ze. If the judgment had been made, then it seems like nothing she said would be able to change Ying Xi Ze's opinion that she was a man. If that was the case, then why was she still hesitating? Just say it straight. I'm not a cross-dressing actor. Lu Zhi Wei said. I'm an actress. Ying Xi Ze startled slightly, then asked for a word in private. Lu Zhi Wei followed him to the side obediently. Ying Xi Ze's expression was still complicated. After a few seconds of silence, he asked, Lu Zhi, too, did you encounter some difficulties? Lu Zhi Wei was stunned. Frowning, Ying Xi Ze asked, or else why can't you be honest about your identity as a man? Lu Zhi Wei. Seeing her stay silent, Ying Xi Ze seemed to have something pop up in his brain as he suddenly patted her shoulder. You're older than me, so it's not wrong for me to call you Ji. Lu Ji, since you have your own difficulties, I won't force you to say it either. But you can't use this identity to do evil things, or I won't help you keep it a secret, okay? Lu Zhi Wei. Help. This conversation was too outrageous, she didn't even know what to reply. With a "you don't need to thank me, we're all bros" expression, Ying Xi Ze suddenly asked after a moment of thinking, Lu Ji, do you know Miss Sang? Lu Zhi Wei replied honestly and a bit hesitantly. A little? Ying Xi Ze? What kind of answer was that? Who would know someone a little? Then why did you smile at her just now? Lu Zhi Wei slowly and righteously said, she looked at me, so I smiled to be polite. Isn't that the right thing to do? She looked at me. These 4 words slowly drifted into Ying Xi Ze's ear, all the way to his heart, and it was as if a needle had jabbed him, painfully and itchily. He paused. Please read at Jiulian Lian. WordPress. That's right. It was clearly Sang Wan Ci who had looked over first. And Sang Wan Ci hadn't even been willing to look at him more than an initial glance, a cold one at that. He stayed silent for a moment before looking at Lu Zhi Wei and smiling, you're right. Then, if there's nothing else, I'll head off first. You work hard too. Gu, I believe you can definitely become the best cross-dressing actor in our country, Lu Zhi Wei. That wouldn't be necessary. Lu Zhi Wei watched as Ying Xi Ze left. She thought that Ying Xi Ze was polite and interesting, his character was actually quite likable. Thinking about it, she couldn't understand how someone like this could eventually become such a detestable side character. Could he be saved or not? Tucking her hands into her pockets, Lu Zhi Wei sank into deep contemplation. Regardless of whether she could save him or not, she would try her best. This way, she could protect Sang Wan Ci as well, as long as she could make Ying Xi Ze realize that fruit snatched by force wasn't sweet, that he shouldn't be so adamant about chasing Sang Wan Ci. It could be a great outcome. Especially if he went to date someone who was willing to be with him, or he could wait for his white moonlight to come back. Worst come to worst, he could focus on his career. But speaking of which, when was the 5th mission going to come? Her heart was too eager for the prize and couldn't be contained. Before filming started, there was a script reading session with all the important cast members. Lu Zhi Wei had a moderate amount of scenes, and because she was the closest maid to the female lead and had an important role in the development of the story, she had to join in too. The main cast of Phoenix were all serious and professional people, nobody would doubt the quality of their work. As long as they acted and filmed it, the audience would definitely watch it. They would never not support a product that had responsible and serious actors. Lu Zhi Wei sat in a discreet location, hugging her notebook as her mind was in a bit of a mess. She hadn't experienced this atmosphere in a very, very long time. It finally symbolized her return after drifting away from her dreams. In the beginning, she was completely focused and she didn't look at Sang Wan Ci much aside from when she was reading the script. The her now was not the male lead who needed to save the world, but a student who had newly returned to the entertainment industry and wanted to study hard. Sang Wan Ci was the one who kept looking over at Lu Zhi Wei because of the two occurrences. Each time, she saw Lu Zhi Wei sitting there and seriously taking notes, with the passion for the job apparent in her eyes. This side of her was burning like a fire, radiant as the sun. Nobody present could compare. Looking back at her script, Sang Wan Ci flipped through it. This was good. Please read at Julian Lien. WordPress. Com. Regardless of whether she was a fan, as long as she treated her work seriously, it was good. As she looked down, Lu Zhi Wei raised her head and looked over. They just missed each other. Lu Zhi Wei asked Lao Wu, curiously, was she looking at me just now? Lao Wu, I don't know, I'm busy, I didn't see. He was happily fixing the bug. But what made him happy was not the appearance of the bug, but because it was the first time he was fixing a bug that had appeared for the first time. Even if the bug was urgent, it was fine even if he couldn't fix it immediately. He wasn't someone who liked repetitive things, but as a system administrator, he had no choice but to encounter a lot of repetitive things. Even if he didn't like it, he would have to suck it up and do it anyway. Oh, then go ahead. Lu Zhi Wei retracted her gaze and continued listening to the producers. The back and forth between Lu Zhi Wei and Sang Wan Ci was observed by Ying Xi Ze, though. He snuck a glance at Sang Wan Ci, then he looked at the serious and focused Lu Zhi Wei. Thinking of how Sang Wan Ci had looked at Lu Zhi Wei first the other day, doubt crept into his heart. Could Miss Sang like a serious man like Lu Zhi? Chapter 9. After considering it for a short moment, Ying Xi Ze realized it wasn't right. Looking around, it seemed like he was the only one who knew Lu Zhi was actually a man. At least, Sang Wan Ci absolutely did not know it. Then how could he be so sure that Sang Wan Ci was interested in a man like Lu Zhi? She could be. Touching upon a certain possibility, Ying Xi Ze's eyes widened and he didn't dare to continue his thought. No, it definitely wasn't like that. Miss Sang hadn't even said she liked girls, how could he impose his own suspicions on her? It has to be that Miss Sang was interested in a person like Lu Zhi. It had nothing to do with whether the person was a male or female. It has to be. After he thought it through, his gaze toward Lu Zhi Wei filled with scrutiny and longing as he secretly made a decision. He would work hard to attract Sang Wan Ci's attention. There was no choice. Sang Wan Ci's similarity to his white moonlight could already lead his emotions astray, making him happy, sad and uncontrollably desire to be even closer. So for his love, he would try his best to make Sang Wan Ci more interested in him. From today onwards, Lu Zhi Wei was the person he would aspire to learn to be. For now, he would pay attention and learn from Lu Zhi. He collected his thoughts and began to concentrate. At this moment, Lu Zhi Wei heard Lao Wu say, I see it. Lu Zhi Wei was stunned, what? Lao Wu, Ying Xi Ze was looking at you just now with eyes filled with longing. Lu Zhi Wei? Lao Wu, oh, I haven't fixed it yet. You're still a guy in his eyes. Lu Zhi Wei? My God. The second male lead staring at the male lead with longing in his eyes. What sort of freaking development is this? Wasn't Ying Xi Ze supposed to like Sang Wan Ci? It couldn't be that he was acting out of the script? This is a goddamn fanfiction. Lu Zhi Wei kept her head lowered as she complained in her heart. The script reading session for today ended. Lu Zhi Wei glanced at her notebook as she started walking back toward the hotel. She wasn't the main lead, or anybody important. She was just an old, cute actor who was new to the industry, so she was staying in a regular hotel. Sang Wan Ci and the rest were staying in a nice hotel that was on the way, so sometimes they would walk together on the same route. Looking at her pages of notes, she was indescribably happy. In her memory, it had been a few years since she had done her homework, before filming so seriously. That her at that time was pretty much the same age as Sang Wan Ci. It was the time when they were young and looking to work hard in their first job. But her luck wasn't good, her characters were all small and forgettable. Soon, she left and the company didn't even think of keeping her. She knew what sort of situation it was, and she wasn't upset either, leaving lightheartedly. At that time she thought, it was good enough she got to act, it was already a dream come true. But she didn't expect that after all the twists and turns, she would still be able to return to the industry, to open her notebook again and note down all the intricacies of a character. Thinking about it, her eyes brightened up, filling with emotion. But at this moment, an urgent call came from behind her. Lu Zhi Wei, watch out. What? She crashed into a tree. Luckily, she had been walking slowly so it wasn't a hard crash. It was just that her nose had a bit of a bump. Thankfully, the skin wasn't broken, it was just a bit red. But even that bit of a bump caused enough trouble for someone who feared pain like her. Sang Wan Ci watched as she crashed into the tree and her notebook dropped out of her hand and fell to the ground. Lu Zhi Wei didn't pick it up, bending over slightly and holding onto her nose without saying anything. That view of her back was suffused with pain and suffering. It was quite similar to the day they met. Having seen it and even trying to warn her, Sang Wan Ci just walked up and asked, "Are you okay?" Lu Zhi Wei held tightly onto her nose and didn't say anything. Not okay, she was very not okay. She felt as if her nose was no longer hers, the pain was killing her. Seeing Lu Zhi Wei on the verge of tears, Sang Wan Ci felt bad and reached out to support her. "Turn around, let me see." Lu Zhi Wei slowly turned around and she slowly put down the wrist that had been grasped, revealing a slightly red nose. Furrowing her brows, Lu Zhi Wei looked at Sang Wan Ci's face. It was close. Sang Wan Ci's features were all magnified right in front of her, it seemed almost as if her white porcelain skin would shatter if it was lightly touched. A sunbeam broke through the leaves of the tree and landed on Sang Wan Ci's face, almost like a glistening scale, illuminating her skin. Lu Zhi Wei stared in a trance. "It's not too bad," Sang Wan Ci said calmly. "Is it very painful?" Coming back to reality, Lu Zhi Wei blinked rapidly as the tears that had gathered at the corners of her eyes fell. She removed her hand as if she had been scalded and rubbed her eyes roughly as she said, "I'm afraid of pain, sorry, it's kind of embarrassing." She sighed in her heart. Honestly, Sang Wan Ci was too good-looking. She was like a goddess who descended to earth, so good-looking that nobody could beat her. "It's no big deal," Sang Wan Ci said. "Remember to look at the road when you're walking." Lu Zhi Wei's heart was screaming in awkwardness. Really, she had never thought that she would be asked by someone 4 years younger than her to look at the road when walking. Furthermore, Sang Wan Ci's tone was calm, not like she was scolding her or despising her. She was merely giving a suggestion, it was up to Lu Zhi Wei to take it or not. That made her feel even more like she was being educated by a child. "Lu Zhi Wei, I'm sorry, I've embarrassed my ancestors." She hugged her notebook and touched her nose as she smiled awkwardly, "There won't be a next time. I was just too happy, so I didn't look at the road. Sorry about that." "Happy?" Lu Zhi Wei waved her notebook as she bore the pain and smiled. This. Sang Wan Ci's gaze fell to the book, it was filled with various colorful post-it notes. Lu Zhi Wei continued, "Being an actress is my dream, so I'm happy I can act." It was only now that Sang Wan Ci realized. So Lu Zhi Wei didn't show up here because of her. She has her own dreams, her own pursuits. She wasn't her fan, it was Sang Wan Ci who misunderstood. "Work hard," Sang Wan Ci said with a tinge of guilt. Nodding, Lu Zhi Wei smiled, "You too, teacher Sang. I've watched all your shows, your acting is really awesome. I'm sure you can win multiple acting awards in the future, believe me." Because that's what was written in the original storyline. Sang Wan Ci had heard plenty of these sort of praise in the past, to the point that she was numb to it. Whether it would happen, whether she could do it, it was all dependent on her own abilities. It wouldn't come true just from other people's words, and she had a lot more to learn when it came to acting. But when it was Lu Zhi Wei who said it, it was different. It immediately overturned her previous assumption that she wasn't her fan. Watched all the shows. She really was her fan. So the super charismatic person Lu Zhi Wei was talking about was actually herself. Sang Wan Ci. Thanks, but there's no need, you're going overboard with your praise. But thankfully, through the past few days of observation, Lu Zhi Wei was very rational. She had never expressed any sort of crazy obsession with Sang Wan Ci. Maybe she was controlling it, maybe she was a rational fan after all, and kneeling on one knee that day really was just due to her legs going weak. Looking at her, Sang Wan Ci decided to believe the latter. Because even now when nobody was around, Lu Zhi Wei wasn't crazily professing her love either. Sang Wan Ci replied politely, "Thank you." Lu Zhi Wei's eyes curved up as she smiled, "You're welcome, teacher Sang." As she smiled, she rubbed her nose, looking a bit funny. "If it really hurts, remember to put some medicine on when you get back." Sang Wan Ci's eyes traced across her forehead, clean and clear, without even a single pimple. Withdrawing her gaze, she turned around. "I'll head back first." "Okay, teacher Sang." Lu Zhi Wei was incredibly polite. Without a mission issued, she wouldn't try to get close to Sang Wan Ci. What if she didn't manage to get on her good side, but she managed to disgust her? She stood there, staring at Sang Wan Ci's back as she started to feel slightly conflicted. She wanted to get the 5th mission point to draw the prize, but she was afraid of that greasy system making her embarrassed as hell in front of Sang Wan Ci. Sang Wan Ci might not even just take 2 steps back in the end, she might just draw a line between them and whoever crossed it would die. If that happened, Lu Zhi Wei could only wait to see the domineering president punching little monsters to death. Just as she thought about it, the system's voice rang out, scaring her. "Mission issued, get the female lead Sang Wan Ci's contact from her. System prompt, mission has no time limit. Lu Zhi Wei? What was this no time limit? Lao Wu jumped in to explain, it means there's no time limit for you to complete the mission. As long as you can get Sang Wan Ci's contact details, it counts as you completing it. Lu Zhi Wei. She can do it. Compared to a time limit, this was simply a heaven-sent mission, specially sent to give her some warmth and comfort. She loved it. Please send more time limit-free missions in the future. Lu Zhi Wei walked ahead confidently. Prize drawing, here I come. Hearing the hasty footsteps behind her, Sang Wan Ci turned around and asked in confusion, "Do you still need something?" "Yes." She control. Chapter 10. It was definitely the most bitter smile Sang Wan Ci had ever seen. It was bitter and tragic. She couldn't help but doubt Lu Zhi Wei. Was it really because her legs went weak? Then why did she yelp? Did her legs really go weak again? With a doubtful expression, her eyes moved to Lu Zhi Wei's legs. It didn't look like there was any problem with them. Lu Zhi Wei slowly got up while rubbing her kneecap, feeling a little numb. Not even in her wildest dreams would she have thought she would kneel to the same person twice. All the awkwardness in the world was going to be created by her alone. If anybody asked, it was the system's fault, and this mommy found Lao Wu. If only he had remembered to remind her that there was an attempt limit, she wouldn't have dared to have gone ahead like that. Time limits and attempt limits, they're both devils. She forced herself to stand straight, then she heard Sang Wan Ci's stern voice, "If your legs always go weak, you should check it out at a hospital." Some people might have constantly weak legs, but she was just being constantly shocked by electricity. Lu Zhi Wei cried silently in her heart. "Thank you for your concern, teacher Sang." Sang Wan Ci asked hesitantly, "You're all right now?" Lu Zhi Wei forced a smile, "I'm all right now." Sang Wan Ci. "Your smile is very bitter." Lu Zhi Wei. "It's because my life is bitter. If it wasn't bitter, why would I get bound to a system that's an electric god?" She criticized the system in her heart, but didn't show it on her face. "Because both times were in front of you. It's really embarrassing. Sang Wan Ci wasn't the type of person who would laugh at someone's awkwardness, and Lu Zhi Wei might actually have a physical problem. Physical ailments are even more off-limits. Everybody had to be respectful. Sang Wan Ci wasn't in a rush to leave. You're really alright? Lu Zhi Wei nodded. Sang Wan Ci still didn't feel reassured. Where's your manager? Lu Zhi Wei pulled out her phone and took a look. Oh, she's coming over to find me now. Oh. Sang Wan Ci said. Then I'll wait for her with you. Lu Zhi Wei? Sang Wan Ci's eyes shifted to the front and she said calmly without moving a step, I don't feel safe leaving you like this. Staring at her side profile, Lu Zhi Wei paused for a while before saying, thank you. Sang Wan Ci glanced at her briefly. You're welcome. Lu Zhi Wei sprawled by the side of the window as she watched the autumn breeze blow through the branches of a tree. There was nobody else in the room. The quietness felt almost like the whole world had sunk into slumber. Fixing the bug wasn't an easy task, and Lao Wu decided to take a break and have a cup of coffee. Raising his mug, he looked up and realized Lu Zhi Wei was in a trance. What's on your mind? Hearing the voice, Lu Zhi Wei tilted her head slightly. She was worried something would happen to me, so she stayed with me until Xiaoyao came. She's a really good person. Who? Sang Wan Ci? Sang Wan Ci was the first person to show any kindness to her after she had gotten the halo. She was also the only person who would still be concerned for her body and wouldn't make fun of her even after those 2 times the system embarrassed her. Lu Zhi Wei knew it was because of the halo, but never had anybody treated her like that. From young, she didn't know what was care and concern. It was like a luxury telling her from above that she would never obtain it in her lifetime. So even if she cut her hands or fingers, she would cry in her room and put on band-aids herself. She knew that even if she showed her parents her fingers, they would only put on a band-aid for her and not care too much. They certainly wouldn't treat her as carefully as they treated her sister, Lu Si Jiao. Even the meaning behind their names was drastically different. Ji Wei, Si Jiao. The former was as small as a speck of dust, while the latter was beloved and cherished like a precious gem or treasure. But she couldn't blame anyone. It was all the fault of her transparent body. So the first time she heard Sang Wan Ci's concern for her, the first time she heard someone say, I don't feel safe leaving you like this, to her, her heart was deeply touched, even if those were normal words of care for other people. She was grateful. She was at a loss. She would feel like the other person was the best person on the planet. Thinking about it, she laughed embarrassedly. I'm quite useless, aren't I? It's just a bit of concern, but I'm so touched by it. Lao Wu, this isn't you being useless, it's a common occurrence. Because you've never had it before, so when you have it, you'll treasure it even more. Smiling, Lu Zhi Wei sat up straight and stretched, gazing off in the distance, with bright eyes. She had decided. No matter what the future was like, she had to treat Sang Wan Ci nicely now and repay her. But right now, she wished even more that Lao Wu could change this punishment method, or Sang Wan Ci would really think she was a mental patient. Lao Wu sorrowfully expressed he couldn't. The punishment method couldn't be changed unless it was under very special circumstances. By the way, the mission to get her contact details have been added to the list of missions to be completed. Whenever you get her contact, it'll be considered complete. Missions to be completed are a list of the missions that you failed, but still have to be done. But don't worry, because the punishments have been given, you won't be punished anymore. He cheered her on, Baby Lu, continue working hard, Mommy believes in you. Lu Zhi Wei. She decided to knit a sweater to calm down. Soon after the script reading, filming started. Lu Zhi Wei's character had a stutter. Because she was always laughed at when she spoke, she had an inferiority complex, so the older she got, the more she didn't dare to speak. In the end, she kept silent most of the time and she was only willing to speak when she was with the female lead. The dressing of the character was very plain. There was only a single shiny pin in her hair and it was a birthday present given by the female lead that was cherished like a treasure by the girl. After Lu Zhi Wei got her hair and makeup done, she left the room, bumping immediately into Ying Xi Ze. He immediately patted her shoulder and raised a thumb, speaking in a voice only the two of them could hear. Lu Ji, awesome, it's totally impossible to see you're a guy. From this day onward, you're the best cross-dressing actor in my heart. If it was a few days ago, Lu Zhi Wei would have been speechless at this praise, unable to even say a thank you. But after being poisoned these few days, her internal OS had been upgraded. It's alright if she's a little tired, she should just smile and go on with life. So she immediately raised her thumb. Thanks, Didi. 1. Since you took the initiative to call me your GE, then Jia will accept you as a Didi. When she saw Sang Wan Ci in historical costume, she was utterly stunned. There were no luxurious satin or excessive accessories. It was just a set of white garments that brought out her pure, calm, elegant softness. Just a set of plain clothes was already so good-looking. She didn't dare to think how attractive Sang Wan Ci would be once she started wearing the elegant and luxurious palace costume. She walked up and praised wholeheartedly, Teacher Sang, it's really good-looking. It really suits you. Sang Wan Ci replied, thank you, you look very good too. She even smiled politely. Seeing this situation, Ying Xi Ze immediately followed suit, Teacher Sang, I think you're good-looking too. He had been observing Lu Zhi Wei these few days and trying to learn from her. It was almost to the point that he had learned how to become a cross-dressing actor. Even his assistant said he was acting quite gay lately, wondering if his sexual orientation had changed. It was only then that he realized he was an idiot. Why did he have to learn everything? He just needed to learn how Lu Ji treated Miss Sang and analyze that. Like this, for example, praising. Praise is one of humankind's motivating factors. Nobody would not like to hear nice words. He learned something again today, thanks, Lu Ji. When Sang Wan Ci replied to him, it sounded like she was a master who cared for the whole world. Thanks, everybody looks very good. Ying Xi Ze? It felt like he was being treated differently. Lu Zhi Wei realized something as well. Ying Xi Ze was copying her actions. Then came the problem. What was he copying her for? What was there to learn from someone who was broke and hadn't had any success in her career? Unless Ying Xi Ze wanted to be a cross-dressing actor? After thinking about it, Lu Zhi Wei had a my god, so the person who actually wants to be a cross-dressing actor is this kid expression while looking at Ying Xi Ze. He was confused and specially went to look for her during lunch. The two of them sat in the small canteen, their backs toward the door. Gu. Ying Xi Ze called out to her in a small voice. Why were you looking at me in shock today? Lu Zhi Wei held on to her plain, boring lunch as she said, because I discovered something. Ying Xi Ze, what? Lu Zhi Wei, you want to be a cross-dressing actor. Cough. Cough cough. Ying Xi Ze choked. Lu Zhi Wei quickly handed him a bottle of water. This kid, eat slowly. So be it if you want to be one, it's not some sort of disgraceful career, why are you being so sneaky about it? Ying Xi Ze's face was all red, and after he managed to catch his breath, he said, no, you've misunderstood. I don't want to be a cross-dressing actor. Lu Zhi Wei's eyebrows knitted together, then why are you copying my actions lately, aren't you learning how to be a girl? Ying Xi Ze laughed, I know you're a man, how could I learn from you? If I wanted to learn, I would observe a real girl. Hearing it, Lu Zhi